Case file 002. Every year, on my birthday, a card arrived. Same handwriting. Same blue envelope. Same short message. Happy birthday. I'm proud of you. For 12 years. My family believed. My grandfather had written those cards. Before he died. There was only one problem. The envelopes were postmarked. Every single year. Someone was mailing them. Long after he was gone. At first, we thought it was a family member. Then, the police checked the post office records. And that's when this ordinary birthday card became an official investigation. The kind of man everyone trusted. He never missed a birthday. Not one. Every year, he would handwrite a birthday card. Inside, he always wrote the same sentence. I'm proud of you. As a child, I never thought much about it. It was simply our family tradition. When he died, everyone believed that tradition had ended forever. His funeral was quiet. Family. Close friends. A few neighbors. Nothing unusual. My grandmother never really recovered. She kept his old chair exactly where it had always been. His reading glasses stayed on the small table beside it. Even years later, nobody touched them. Life slowly moved forward. Birthdays came. Christmas passed. People grew older. And eventually, everyone accepted that Arthur Collins was gone. Exactly 1 year later, on the morning of my 9th birthday, someone knocked on our front door. There was nobody outside. Only a blue envelope resting on the welcome mat. My mother picked it up. She smiled at first. Then, her smile disappeared. She turned the envelope over again, looked at the handwriting, then quietly whispered, "No." My father walked over. "What happened?" She handed him the envelope. He stared at it for several seconds. Neither of them spoke. I remember asking, "Can I open it?" Neither answered. Finally, my father slowly nodded. Inside was a birthday card. Simple. White paper. Blue ink. Just one sentence. Happy birthday. I'm proud of you. There was no signature. There didn't need to be one. Everyone in that room recognized the handwriting immediately. It was my grandfather's. Exactly the same. Every letter. Every curve. Every tiny detail. My grandmother began crying. Not loudly. Just quietly. Almost like she had been expecting something. She never wanted to happen. My father kept repeating, "This isn't funny." My mother searched every corner of the envelope. No fingerprints. No return address. Nothing. Only a postmark. Stamped the previous afternoon. Someone had mailed it. Less than 24 hours earlier. That made no sense. My grandfather had been buried for an entire year. The family tried to explain it away. Maybe he had written dozens of birthday cards before he died. Maybe someone forgot to mail them. Maybe the post office had made some strange mistake. Those explanations sounded reasonable. At least, for a little while. Then my mother remembered something. My grandfather never planned birthdays in advance. He always waited until the night before. He believed birthday wishes should never be written early. He used to say, "If tomorrow isn't promised, today's words matter more." Everyone remembered him saying that. Which meant, He couldn't have written 12 birthday cards years in advance. Not according to the way he lived. The room became silent again. Nobody wanted to say what everyone was thinking. Because if Arthur Collins hadn't written that card before he died, then someone else had. And whoever that person was, they knew his handwriting perfectly. They knew our address. They knew my birthday. And somehow, they wanted us to believe that Arthur Collins had never really stopped writing. For the next few weeks, the birthday card became the only thing anyone talked about. Every member of the family had a different explanation. My uncle believed someone was playing a cruel joke. My grandmother refused to discuss it. Every time the card was mentioned, she quietly left the room. My father wanted answers. Real answers. So he took the envelope, the birthday card, and several letters my grandfather had written over the years, to a handwriting examiner. The examiner spent nearly 2 hours comparing every detail. The shape of each letter, the pressure of the pen, the spacing between words, even the way certain sentences slanted slightly upward. When he finally looked up, his expression had changed. He pushed every document back across the table and slowly said, "If someone forged this, they're one of the best I've ever seen." My father asked, "So it isn't his handwriting?" The examiner stayed quiet for several seconds. Then he answered, "I didn't say that. What I said is, I can't find a meaningful difference." According to every test he could perform, the birthday card and my grandfather's old letters had been written by the same hand. That should have been impossible. But impossible was becoming normal. My father wasn't satisfied. He wanted to know where the envelope had actually been mailed. The postmark showed the name of a small post office, about 20 miles from our house. The next morning, he drove there. The building was old. Only 2 employees worked behind the counter. He showed them the envelope and asked if they remembered it. Neither of them did. Thousands of letters passed through every week. One envelope meant nothing. But one employee noticed something unusual. The ink used for the postmark matched the machine inside that very office, which meant the envelope had definitely passed through there. It wasn't fake. It wasn't printed at home. Someone had physically walked into that post office and mailed it. My father asked the question he had been afraid to ask. "Do you have security cameras?" The employee nodded. "We do. But we only keep recordings for 30 days. By then, more than 6 weeks had already passed. The footage was gone forever. The first real chance to identify the sender had disappeared. On the drive home, my father didn't say a single word. That evening, he placed the birthday card back into its envelope, locked it inside a small metal box, and slid it onto the top shelf of his closet. He believed the mystery was over. There was nothing else anyone could do. No suspects. No evidence. No explanation. Life slowly returned to normal. Or at least, that's what everyone wanted to believe. Until 11 months later, 3 days before my next birthday, someone knocked on our front door again. 3 days before my 10th birthday, the doorbell rang again. This time, my father reached the front door first. He opened it immediately. The front porch was empty. No footsteps. No car pulling away. No one walking down the street. Just one blue envelope lying on the welcome mat. It looked exactly like the first one. Same color. Same size. Same handwriting. My father didn't touch it. Instead, he called the local police. 20 minutes later, an officer arrived. He photographed the envelope where it was, put on a pair of gloves, carefully sealed it inside an evidence bag. Then he looked at my father and said, "If someone is doing this, we'll find them." For the first time, our birthday cards had become an official police case. The envelope was taken to the station. They searched for fingerprints, DNA, anything. But the results came back almost completely clean. Whoever had mailed it had left almost nothing behind. The only usable evidence was the handwriting. And once again, every expert reached the same conclusion. It matched my grandfather's writing perfectly. A few days later, the police returned the card to us. Inside, the message was different this time. "Happy birthday. I'm proud of you. Don't forget the red box." That last sentence changed everything. I stared at the card. My parents stared at each other. Neither of them understood what it meant. The red box. My mother whispered the words, as if saying them out loud might somehow reveal the answer. No one in the family remembered a red box. Not my father. Not my grandmother. Not my uncle. Nothing. The police assumed it was simply another attempt to confuse us. But later that night, my grandmother asked everyone to leave. She wanted to speak to my father alone. Nearly an hour passed. When my father finally walked out of her room, his face had turned completely pale. He walked straight into the attic, without saying a word. Boxes were moved. Old furniture scraped across the floor. Dust filled the air. Almost 30 minutes later, he came back down. In his hands was a small wooden box, painted dark red, old, worn, and covered in years of dust. My grandmother looked at it and quietly began to cry. She hadn't seen it since the day my grandfather died. She said only one sentence: "I forgot it even existed." No one spoke. My father slowly unlocked the tiny brass latch. The lid creaked open. Inside, there wasn't any money. No jewelry. No family photographs. There was only a single folded piece of paper, and written across the front, in my grandfather's handwriting, were 6 words. "Open this only if the cards return." My father's hands were shaking. No one spoke. The entire room felt frozen. He carefully unfolded the paper. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was my grandfather's. The letter began, "If you're reading this, then the cards have returned." I prayed this day would never come. My grandmother covered her mouth. She had never seen the letter before. Neither had anyone else. My father continued reading. "There is something I never told this family. 30 years ago, I worked as a volunteer, sorting undelivered mail. One evening, I found a blue envelope with no return address. It was addressed to a man who had died the week before. I assumed someone simply didn't know, so I delivered it anyway. But when his wife opened it, she screamed. The letter inside had been written after her husband died. Everyone looked at each other. The room had become completely silent. My father kept reading. I tried to forget what happened. But over the years, I discovered I wasn't the first, and I wasn't the last. There were others. Families. Receiving letters from people who should never have been able to write them. I searched for answers. I found none. The only thing every family had in common was the blue envelope. My heart was pounding. None of this sounded real. It sounded like the beginning of a nightmare. Then we reached the final paragraph. If my family ever receives one of those envelopes, do not throw it away. Do not burn it. And whatever you do, never try to find the sender. Every family that tried received one final letter. And after that, someone disappeared. The room felt colder. No one laughed. No one called it fiction. Because the warning had been written years before the first birthday card ever arrived. There was no way my grandfather could have predicted it. Unless he already knew someone would eventually find us. My father folded the letter, placed it back inside the red box. Then he looked at the blue envelope lying on the table. For several minutes, he didn't move. Finally, he whispered something I will never forget. We're not waiting until next year. If someone has been watching this family for 12 years, we're going to find them. 3 days later, my father contacted a retired postal inspector who had spent 35 years investigating mail fraud, missing shipments, and unexplained postal cases. The old investigator listened quietly, looked at the envelope, and before anyone could explain the story, he asked one question. How many cards have you received so far? The retired postal inspector didn't introduce himself. He didn't ask our names. He didn't even sit down. His eyes stayed fixed on the blue envelope. Then he repeated the question. How many cards? My father answered quietly. 2. The old man closed his eyes and let out a slow breath. Then you still have time. Those 6 words changed the entire conversation. My father frowned. What do you mean? We still have time. The inspector reached into his worn leather briefcase. He removed a thick folder. The edges of the papers had turned yellow with age. Across the front, someone had written one title: Blue Envelope Cases. He opened the file. Inside were newspaper clippings, police reports, handwritten notes, old photographs. Some of them were more than 40 years old. He pointed to the first photograph. A family from Oregon. They received 3 letters. He turned another page. A retired teacher from Maine. For letters. Another page. A young couple from Ohio. Only 2. Every case looked different. Different families. Different cities. Different years. But every single one had the same blue envelope and the same impossible handwriting. My father asked, "What happened to them?" The inspector didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slid one final photograph across the table. It showed a family of 4, smiling, standing outside their home. A date was written on the back. 2 weeks later, the father disappeared. No signs of forced entry. No ransom demand. No body. He was simply gone. The inspector looked directly at my father. Every family that ignored the letters, nothing happened. But the families who tried to identify the sender always paid a price. My mother shook her head. That's impossible. The inspector nodded slowly. I agree. But impossible is exactly what these files contain. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. I spent 23 years trying to find the person behind those envelopes. I never found a single suspect. But I did discover one pattern. He reached into the folder again and unfolded a large map. Small red circles covered the country. They never choose people at random. They choose families connected to someone who once handled undelivered mail. The room went silent. My father slowly looked toward the red box, then toward my grandmother. 30 years earlier, my grandfather had volunteered, sorting undelivered mail. The inspector quietly nodded. I believe that's where your family entered the pattern. Before anyone could ask another question, the inspector removed one last item from his briefcase. It wasn't a report. It wasn't a photograph. It was another blue envelope. Older. Faded. Its edges were worn with time. Across the front, written in the same familiar handwriting, was my grandfather's full name. Arthur Collins. Postmarked 29 years ago. The inspector looked at us with an expression I had never seen before. I've been waiting 3 decades to find someone who could explain why this envelope was never opened. No one reached for the envelope. Not at first. It had remained sealed for 29 years. If the date on the postmark was real, then someone had mailed it just weeks before my grandfather began volunteering at the post office. The retired inspector placed it gently on the table. I've carried this for years, he said. I never opened it. It wasn't addressed to me. My father looked around the room. Then, very carefully, he broke the old seal. The paper inside had turned slightly yellow with age. There was only one page. No signature. No explanation. Just a single message. Arthur, if this letter has reached you, then you're already part of it. You will receive another envelope. You can ignore it, or you can follow it. If you choose to follow, never let your family do the same. They didn't choose this. You did. The room fell silent. My father turned the page over. Nothing. That was the entire letter. The inspector quietly spoke. My grandfather received one. My father received one. And then, I received one. My father looked up. You never told us that. The old man gave a tired smile. Because I ignored mine. I walked away. I built a normal life. But I kept every file, just in case another family needed them. My grandmother suddenly whispered. Arthur ignored it too. Everyone looked at her. She slowly nodded. A few days before he died, he told me, if anyone ever asks about blue envelopes, tell them I chose my family. I never understood what he meant. Now, for the first time, we did. My grandfather hadn't solved the mystery. He had made a decision. He stopped chasing it. To protect us. My father carefully folded the letter, placed it back inside the envelope. Then he closed the red box. We're done. No more investigations. No more searching. No more questions. The retired inspector smiled. For the first time, I think that's the right decision. Nothing unusual happened after that. The next birthday came, without a blue envelope. Then another year passed. Nothing. Eventually, the fear faded. Life became normal again. Until last winter, after my grandmother passed away. We emptied her house. In the back of an old bedroom closet, behind a loose wooden panel, we found a small metal tin. Inside were 12 birthday cards, every one of them written in my grandfather's handwriting. Every one of them addressed to me. The last card was still sealed. Across the front, he had written, "Open on your 30th birthday." I haven't opened it. Not yet. My 30th birthday is next month. And after everything my family lived through, I still don't know whether that envelope contains a birthday wish or a warning.